Well, good evening, everybody. And we're going to wait a little bit to make sure that our people are getting online. And so we'll give that some time. Last week we did not do an online Bible study due to the fact that we had our annual family gathering business meeting and it was awesome. We had video reports. Our people gave reports. They created videos. They were awesome. People enjoyed watching them, and it was just amazing. A lot of people talked about afterwards how that even came to the business meeting bummed out, upset about their day. When they left the business meeting, a church business meeting, they were laughing and happy, and it changed their whole attitude. That's pretty amazing. And so that was just awesome. But even on the way out, and we did pretty good. Started at 6:30. We were done by 8 o'clock, so hour and a half was awesome. And but on the way out, they were met with a table of some youth serving root beer floats and bottles of water. And so it was just a great time of outdoor fellowship while we ate our ice cream, our root beer floats, and talked to individuals, trying to social distance. But it was just a great time and of accomplishment. Over the years, we have been a district affiliated church with the Organ Ministry Network. And we never really became a general council affiliated church, which really gives us the freedom to self-govern like we've been doing. So we just had to take care of some housekeeping issues and come into and to make application to how we're actually doing church now anyways, and how we've done it for years. So that application got sent off to the Organ Ministry District to be forwarded to the General Council. And here, probably in the next little bit, instead of being Thrive Church affiliated with the Organ Ministry Network, will be Thrive Church affiliated with the General Council of the Assemblies of God, which a lot of people ask when we changed our name from Klamath Assembly to Thrive Church. Well, are we leaving the assemblies? No, we're not leaving the assemblies. The name change really had to do with what we felt God's direction and leading and what we wanted to see accomplished in our vision for 2018 when we changed our name. We're still an Assembly of God church, believe in its doctrines, its tenets of faith. And so there you have it. And so it was a great meeting, and just kudos to our bookkeeper, Chris, did a great job with his reporting and his video report, along with Ray, our secretary treasurer. And it was just awesome. So like I say, that's kind of where we're at. So I'm, again, just kind of waiting for individuals to sign in. And let me go here for just a moment, because I think I forgot to see who's here, sign and look at my own sign in. So I am going to do that right now. So hold on just a second. And we'll go there. Ha ha ha. Here. Maybe. Nope. That's not what I want to do. Let me see here. For some reason, I cannot. There we go. Finally. All right. We're gonna open this up and see where we're at. All right. Here we go. So if you've joined us, you can say hi and let me know that you're on. That would be awesome. That water tastes pretty good. All right, so we are in John chapter 4. 2 weeks ago, we talked about how Jesus needed to go through Samaria, and he met a woman there at the well, and they had a conversation. She goes back to tell the community of Samaria, the city of Samaria, about him, and saying that you've got to come out and meet. And so so that was good. And while she was doing that, of course, the disciples, they had come back and they had went into the town and bought some food. And so we're gonna pick up with verse 27 in chapter 4. Okay. Kathy, I just wanted you to know, Kathy Hunter, that I've been praying for you this week, and hope all is doing well for you, sis. And anyway, you and your family are in my prayers. So verse 27 says this: and at this point his disciples came, and they marveled that he talked with a woman. So it was very unusual. It wasn't a common practice that rabbis would talk to women and teach women. And so they marveled at this, that Jesus would do that. And anyone that would say Jesus was a woman hater, they don't know Jesus. He did not hate women. He loved women. He respected them. And he talked with them, and he involved them in his circle of influence and invited them in. And so they marveled that he talked with a woman, yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, "Come, see the man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" And then they went out of the city and came to him. But in the meantime, okay, so while she went back, she left her water pot, and she went back into the city to tell these men all that what Jesus did for her, said to her, and revealed about her. And then they were coming out. But in the meantime, while all this was going on, the disciples, okay, his disciples urged him, saying, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "eat." But he said to them, "I have food to eat of which you do not know." Therefore the disciples said to one another, "Has anyone brought him anything to eat?" So they're like, "Okay, Rabbi, teacher, you eat it. You need to eat. Okay, I'm sure you're hungry." Maybe he didn't eat, the last time that they ate, and so they knew he would even be hungrier, or maybe he did. But the idea is they were hungry. They went and got the food. They brought it back, and they said, "Now, Rabbi, it's time to eat. Eat before the food gets cold." Probably was already cold, but you need to eat, and now you need to eat. But Jesus said to them, I have food that you know not of," and so they're they're questioning among themselves, kind of talking among themselves. Has someone brought him anything to eat? And then Jesus explains it, and he says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. And so, this really talks about, I think Spurgeon, talks about how, that it was fitting for Jesus, okay? It was fitting for Jesus to want not to eat and keep doing the work that God brought him to do. Okay? Nobody's arguing that point. And it was also fitting for the disciples to see Jesus and say, you need to eat. First of all, ministry is exhausting. It is sometimes just exhausting. And I'm sure, and there were times that Jesus was exhausted. His physical man himself, he was exhausted. And there were times that he went away and he rested and he needed to rest and all of that. And so, but also at the same time, ministry can be invigorating. That when you see something good happen, it's like, and it's just like, really, wow, that was awesome. And you're just so excited and everything else. And you see that God has touched a person's life. And so that you're just really excited. And that has in itself some energy and some rush. And I remember when we were in swim team years ago and so part of our routine, and I think they do things a little different now, when they realize that, sugar probably wasn't the best thing. Cause what happens with sugar is you eat it and you get an instant rush and instant high and then you get a major letdown. But I remember in swim team, just right before a swim meet, right before you dove into the pool, man, you'd load up on sugar cubes. I don't know how many sugar cubes we went through, but we'd buy boxes of those sugar cubes and we'd just suck on them and just get them, get all that sugar in you and then you'd swim. But apparently the sugar cubes never really helped me out because, I never won a race. Came in third. You might say, well, Pastor, that's pretty good. You came in third place. Yes, man, I came in third place. I came in third place just about every race. There were only 3 people swimming. Matter of fact, I remember one time I was swimming, and I was swimming, and the gun, first of all, the gun went off. We dove into the pool, and I'm swimming. And I hear the crowd yelling, I was swimming and I'm looking and there's nobody around. I'm like, there's nobody in front of me. I'm leading this thing. And I'm swimming and I'm swimming and I'm swimming. Somebody grabs my foot and someone's cheating and I shook them off. Now, remind you, I'm only about 8, 9 years old here. Okay. I'm not very old. And I shook them off and I swam and I got to the end of the pool and I hit the edge of the pool and I'm like, yeah, and I look around and nobody's there and I'm like, yeah. And I get up and I have to go back to the gate because, the swim block, because, it was a false start and they were trying to stop me. So I wouldn't exert all that energy, but I swam that whole length of the pool thinking that I was winning. I had lots of energy and I was going. Well, then I got back to the block again and I got in third place again. Well, I don't know, there might have been more swimmers that day. But yeah, so I mean, I did get a trophy. Got a trophy for the most improved 8 and under. So I was 8 years old when I got that trophy. So yeah, so I don't, anyway, but that's what we used to do. We used to pop those sugar cubes to get that instant energy. And I think there's better ways to do it now to grab that energy and, with protein and things of that nature. But that's what we did. And one guy used to, I don't remember his name, he used to swim with jeans on. And then when during practice and all that, and then when he would swim, he would move quicker. And it's tough to swim in jeans. But anyway, back to my story. But how I got into all this is the fact that that burst of energy. Well, doing the Lord's work can give you that burst of energy. It's exciting. It's just like, wow. Okay. And so he's saying, I get my nourishment by doing the will of the Father, the will of God, the one who sent me. And yet it's not wrong for the disciples to say, Jesus, you've exerted energy and all of this. You need to eat. You need to keep yourself healthy. You need to feed your body. And that is so true. They, and so it wasn't that, should Jesus eat or should he not eat, or should the disciples not been so carnally minded that he had to eat physical food? It's not about that. There are times when the will of God, doing the will of God and stuff, you just go. And I remember growing up working with my dad. I hated working with, well, let me rephrase that. I didn't hate working with my dad, but I hated working with my dad. It wasn't the work that I hated. It wasn't my dad who I hated. I'll tell you what I hated working with my dad is my dad would go to work. He'd bring his couple hard-boiled eggs or whatever. But we never really broke for lunch. Now, I'm not saying that on occasion he didn't take a lunch and we didn't go to like McDonald's or something, or a restaurant that he bought lunch and stuff. There were those times, but those are rare. Man, when we worked. We didn't take a lot of time to eat. Matter of fact, pretty much work came first. I remember Mom calling out to the field when we were haying and running a tractor. One of our, well, back to the plumbing before I get to that tractor story. We were, plumbing. And so he would never take a lunch and we just work right through it. And that used to drive me nuts. And then I found out that I'm kind of the same way. I can work through lunch and not even think about it. I got some of the guys that work with me at the church, our work days, that they're like, my wife will come to me and say, you better get them to lunch or something because they're hungry and you're not, because I'm just focused on the work, man. I'm getting it done. I'm excited people are here. We're working and just going to town and, that energizes me and I'm just going. And, before you know it, it's like, so some word's gotten around that, you work with Pastor, you might not get to eat, at least anytime soon. But the other thing is when, and so that was kind of my dad. He just worked through lunch and that used to just drive me nuts. Oh man, I'd be starving. So, of course I was a teenager. Of course I'd starve. I was always starving. And, so anyway, back to what I was saying about farming. So we would be then working on the ranch and my dad had this old Poppin' Johnny tractor. I don't know why I never put a battery in it, but we always had to pull start it. And once we got it started, it didn't stop until we were done. And so that tractor would go pop, 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 and it would just pop. And we would start in working the hill, the field, baling the hay, whatever we were doing. And a lot of times during hay time, baling the hay and never stopping. I remember Mom coming through the apple orchard, standing at the edge of the apple orchard, waving her hand saying, come on, it's dinner time. And we're like, oh yes, 6 o'clock dinner time. And by the time that we actually went into dinner, it was 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And because Dad didn't want to stop and we worked through those things and stuff like that. And so, and I get that now. I can work through some things. I remember doing a work day at the church. Everybody went home, but there was still something that needed to get done. And I was still there till 7 o'clock at night getting it done because I had to get the lift back the next day. And so, I've kind of, as much as I hated that, kind of developed that working and stuff. So, trying to get a little better now. But anyway, but this is, when you're doing the Lord's work, you can be so excited you can look at the need of everything that needs to get done, those who are hurting and all of this. And if you really look, there is so much hurting in the world that really, and around you, that you would never stop. Okay, you would never stop. And there were times that Jesus didn't stop to take care of himself, that he did ministry. But the key word is here that to do the will of the Father. See, we understand that it's the will of the Father to meet people's needs, but it doesn't mean that you're the only one that has to do it. There are others out there. You're not the only one. Don't work as if you're the only one. But at the same time, don't quit working. Don't stop working if God hasn't told you to, or if God has led you to do something, then you take care of it. Okay. And you do it. And that's what Jesus did. There were times that he separated and he went away from the crowd, and other times crowds followed him and he still did ministry. But other times it was like, get me to the other side, and so he had his rest. He had to go and get his rest. And so this whole idea, and so the disciples really telling Jesus, hey, you need to eat, you need to take care of your body, is not a lack of faith on their part. They were right in what they were saying. Jesus was right in what he was saying. Okay. That, his strength was coming from doing the will of the Father. But also the disciples knew that if you don't take care of your physical, eventually you're gonna crash and burn. So they were contending for Jesus' physical strength, and so that's kind of what is happening here. And so he's saying to him, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. And then he says this. He says, "Do not say that there are still 4 months." And then comes the harvest. Okay. Oh man, we got 4 months away. By the way, 4 months comes very quickly, doesn't it? Matter of fact, I'm thinking, wow, guess what? I've got 3 months. I got 4 months before bow season. I got time. And all of a sudden it hit me today as I'm driving by the shooting range there on Anderson, seeing all the bow targets out there. And there was a guy out there shooting. And I realized I don't have 4 months. I don't have 3 months. I don't have 2 months. I've got a month. I got to get out there and start shooting my bow regularly. I got to start shooting and getting getting in the zone. And all of a sudden it just comes up on you. And this is what Jesus was saying. Don't say that there's 4 months until the harvest. Because this is going to come quickly. Matter of fact, it's already here. Listen to what he says. He says, "Do not say that there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest. Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for harvest." He's like, look at the fields. Now, if you know anything about harvesting wheat or grain, you know that when we would grow our grain, And we grew wheat sometimes, and we grew some oats at another time. Most of our crop was alfalfa, but we did switch off to do some of those other things. And but growing the grains and the oats and the wheat and the barley, things of that nature. Here's what we did. With oats, you would plant, you would water, you would see the grass begin to grow, then you'd see the grain begin to head out and the oats begin to form. And if you picked one of the shell of the oat off and you would begin to squeeze it, you'd begin to see that at one point it was just kind of watery. There was not much there, not much substance there. But as time went on, the head or the grain would get to become a milky substance, and you'd break it open, it would kind of be kind of pasty and that, and then pretty soon it would just be kind of a soft white. And then and with oats, when you harvested it for oat hay and not combining it, you didn't want the oats falling off, so you would cut it early when the grain was soft and still green, so that it wouldn't fall off of the leaf, and you wouldn't lose the nutrients or the value of that in your hay. And so that's what you do. But with barley and wheat, you would wait till that grain hardened up and began to turn white instead of green. It became yellow, and then you would then combine it, and it would take the head of the grain and put it into a hopper, and then take it off and put it into a container or a truck or whatever, and you would harvest that. Okay, and so you can tell when it's time and harvest is getting close. You can tell that, hey, when it forms, hey, I have so long before we're going to start harvesting. And you begin to prepare for the harvest. You've got to make sure your combines are working right, your bait, whatever, your cutters, everything's got to be working right. Okay. Your swathers, if you're cutting oat hay or whatever, you got to make sure everything's working right, because, you don't want to miss that window. All right. Or you'll end up with a lot of seed on the ground. And so you want to get it just right. And so you're looking and you're saying the harvest is coming, And so Jesus was saying, don't look to 4 more months, you have the harvest. Because what he was saying is, and the interesting fact, he says, look to the fields. The fields are ready for harvest. Remember what the woman at the well did? She left her water pots and she went back to the city, Samaria, and told the men of the city what Jesus had done for her, and that he was the Christ, and to come and see. And so probably about the time these group of community members coming out of the community of Samaria, the city of Samaria, Jesus is probably looking towards that direction, saying, look, don't say that the harvest is 4 months away. The fields are ready now for the harvest. And so he says this. He says, for they are already white for harvest. And then he goes on to say this, and he who reaps, receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. There's those that sow, there are those that reap. And for in this the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. Now, so don't get discouraged that if you're a person that has just done a lot of sowing, that you've done a lot of talking to people. You've helped out people. You've served people. You've been over backwards for people. You just have given it all for people to show the love of God, to show the love of Christ, and to be a servant and all of this, and to talk with them. And you've even wept with them. And they've cried with you and all of this, but they never really came to know Jesus. Okay? But it doesn't mean that they won't. It doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't come along and harvest or reap what you have sown. Or that you might eventually sow or reap what somebody else has sown. And so don't be discouraged. All you can do is be willing to plow the ground. But here's the thing. You have to be willing to follow what God's will is for you. Don't be plowing a field that you shouldn't be in. Find out where you need to go. Jesus knew that he had to go through Samaria. That's why he went there. Even though most Jews, especially rabbis, would avoid that. And they would go the long way just to avoid that. Okay? So this is why Jesus was fulfilling God's will for his life. Okay? And so he went on through Samaria, and this is where he met the woman. This is where the woman went back into the community and was bringing people back. And the disciples are talking about eating. He says, I have food. And he's teaching them this lesson about the harvest. And that salvation in the kingdom of God was going to reach everybody. That's why he told his disciples to wait for him in Jerusalem, wait for the baptism of the Holy Spirit in Jerusalem. Don't leave. And he says, then until you receive power from on high, then you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. He included Samaria. And so, but he was telling his disciples before this, he was telling them as these community people were coming, look, the fields are white with harvest. And I could just imagine Jesus sitting there at the well, and his disciples around him, and they're talking and they're asking him about food and hey, you should eat and all this. And he's talking and he says, look, don't say that the harvest is 4 months off, because look, they're coming. They're coming. They're coming. Sometimes sowing can be so hard. And some fields are not easy to plow. Some fields are not easy to toil. But one of these days, the harvest will be there. Be ready. And so he says, look, they're coming, the harvest. And that those who sow and those who reap may rejoice together. For in this saying is true, one sows, the other reaps. And then he says this, I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. So I've sent you I've sent you to reap for what you have not labored. I remember I was in Pastor and Blind. I'd been talking to this individual for a long time about giving his life to Christ, and talk. And we had my dad and a friend of a family come, and they were ministering in our church in Bly, and we were doing some revival services, and lo and behold, this guy shows up, and a friend of our family, he's talking to the guy, and he leads him to the Lord, And he came to me and he said, well, Pastor, Kevin, he says, I'm sorry that that you didn't get to do that. And I'm like, I don't care. He accepted Jesus. That's awesome. See, I realized, and I told this individual, I said, listen, he'd have never came to Jesus while you were talking with him if I hadn't have plowed the soil and been obedient to the Lord in preparing the ground and sowing the seed. So I don't need to be the harvester. I'm going to rejoice with you. And we can rejoice together. So then in verse 39, John goes on to say, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word that the woman who testified, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified. He told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his own word. Then they said to the woman, Now we believe, not because of what you said, for we ourselves had heard him, and we know that he is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world. That eventually people are going to believe in Jesus because of what you tell them, what you say. But eventually they're going to say, I believe not because you told me this, but now I have heard, I have seen, I have tasted and seen that the Lord is good. Myself, I've tasted of it. And so these men, they first believed because of what the woman said to them. But now they heard Jesus. And they didn't believe just because of what the woman said. They believed because they heard the voice of Jesus. And that is the story of the finished story of the Samaritan woman and why Jesus needed to go through Samaria. So I just want to encourage you. Don't lose heart. We're living in a troubled world. There is so much anger and hate. But we know of a man who walked among us. And he wasn't just a man. He was God's Son. Jesus walked among us to show us how to love and how to communicate. See, the Samaritans were such a hated people by the Jews. And I'm going to tell you, there's all kinds of racism in the Bible. Okay, people read the Bible and say, man, that's just all kinds of bad and racist and why would I want to believe the Bible? But you have to understand, if you're reading the Bible and you're seeing all the bad stuff, it's not because God approves of the bad stuff or even remotely likes what the people are doing. But the Bible is revealing to us some things. First of all, the Bible is revealing to us man's failure. But it's also revealing to us God's love. And it's also revealing to us how we should treat one another. So, the Word of God, the thing that I'm holding right now, is of extreme value. Because it shows us God's love, it shows us our own wrongdoings, but it shows us how we can get back to where we need to be and to treat people. And Jesus treated the Samaritan woman and the Samaritans with great love. Okay? and they were part of the harvest. So when you are dealing with somebody who disagrees with you, and they had their disagreements, remember, earlier in chapter 4, they believed one thing, Jews believed another. And I'm going to tell you what I believe about certain things and what Joe Blow down the street believes about certain things or whatever, and Sally Sue believes one thing down the whatever, all these things we can believe what we want to believe here. But one day, we're all going to stand before our God and give an account. But in spite of what we believe, just because somebody believes something different than I believe doesn't mean that I should reject them, it doesn't mean that the gospel has already rejected them. What it means is we should look to see the harvest. That there is a whole mass of people out there that need to be harvested, that need to be told the truth. So where am I in this harvest? God, what is my job to do? God, lead me, guide me, direct me in the part of the harvest that I need to take care of. Because if I need to be taking care of this part of the harvest, I don't need to be over here doing all of this. I need to be right where you want me, God, taking care of the harvest. And that's where we're going to find strength. Many times we can become exhausted because we're not doing the right things. We're doing ministry, but we're not doing the right ministry. We're not doing what God has called us to do. We're not doing His will. We're doing the will of God in general, but we're not doing what He has called us to do. So what is He calling you to do? What part is He calling you to play in the harvest? Are you a planter? A sower? Are you a reaper? A harvester? Are you a waterer? The Bible talks about the different ones that some planted, some watered, some harvested. Well, where are we at in this process? But I can tell you this, the harvest can't be done without all those involved. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So, God help us, strengthen us. Keep us focused on the right task so that we can see a harvest for your kingdom's sake. In Jesus' name. Hey, thanks for tuning in, and God bless you, and you have a great evening. Bye-bye.